Hey, it's Ron at the radiologictechnologist.com. That's the blog. There's also the YouTube channel. I've gotten a response from one of my videos I wanted to do a quick video on and kind of share. I write a lot of articles about X-ray. I've got over 90 on my blog, and a lot of it has to do with helping students to do better in school. And then I try to make videos out of some of that stuff, but it's not always easy to translate it all over. So this video, I thought I would just share the comment about my post on how to be a better student, how to study better, how to make studying easier for you for the ARRT exam. And I'm going to be referencing my split screen here, so you'll see me looking off to the side. But if you go to my blog, it is at, and I'll put the URL in the description, but the blog is the radiologictechnologist.com, and you'll see a set of links across the top that say home, resources, study guides, memes, etc. And there's a sitemap link. If you take if you click on the sitemap link, it will kind of show you a table of contents of all of my articles, or at least until I update it with the most recent. Sometimes it's about 5 articles behind. If you want to see the latest articles, just go to the home page. Otherwise, you can use the sitemap as kind of a table of contents. But I'm going to discuss with you how to study for the ARRT board exam registry with some scientific methods that I've used and taught other people as well that are very helpful. We'll just kind of start at the beginning by saying that it'll be stressful and you'll be nervous. But there are over 337,000 registered technologists. So you just need to remind yourself that if 337,000 people can do it, so can you. And I'm sure that's an old number by now. It's probably a year old, but it can be done. There is a method to the madness, as they say. So I'm going to skip down. There's a link to the video of the article in the article if you'd rather watch the YouTube video. But there is an art to taking difficult board exams. There's hundreds of ways you can study for a test, and I'm not trying to say that the way that I do it is the best that's out there, because it's completely dependent on you. What I am saying is that it worked for me, and I'm going to share it with you to try to help you find yet one more way to study for your boards. I successfully passed my registry for both radiography and computed tomography. But you have to kind of figure out what works for you. So I should mention that unlike what most people think, it's not about how many hours you put in studying, but rather how well you use your time studying. Because you can stare at a book for hours and not retain anything. You have to have a method of studying that makes sense for your style of learning. So I get asked all the time, how do you study effectively for the boards? How do you study with less time if you don't have a lot of time available? And so that's what we're going to discuss today. From my personal experience and testimonies from a bunch of people that I've helped along the way, passing the ARRT boards kind of hinges on 3 things: the right study technique, the right study guides, and the right routine on your exam day. And I'll get into each one of those. So kind of consider those 3 things as your necessary positioning pads, if you will, that you need to put yourself in the best position for passing the ARRT board exams. Let's start with the right study technique. So the right study technique is all about being organized and staying focused and getting the most out of what study time you have. Maximizing the time you have by using force multipliers is very helpful. A force multiplier is a military term used to describe combining multiple techniques so that the sum of using them together is more advantageous than using them individually. So I'm going to show you how to use different study techniques together so that the outcome is better than if you had just used one study technique by itself. Just remember that what really matters at the end of the day is what you can remember from everything you've studied. The study techniques that we're going to discuss today are here to help you remember more while spending fewer hours studying. It's based on scientific evidence, and a shout out to Herman Ebbinghaus, who discovered this stuff a long time ago. Scientific evidence of the capabilities of your brain, and therefore proven to be highly effective. You'll also enjoy studying as opposed to viewing it as a huge hurdle in your daily schedule. Radiography itself requires a high level of analysis and some critical thinking skills in order to understand the concepts and remember on a long-term basis. Achieving this kind of requires the ultimate study mashup. I like to use spaced repetition with a little bit of the Pomodoro Technique, and I'll explain both of those. So we're going to delve into how to master spaced repetition. For a long time now, spaced repetition has remained the most powerful way for people to remember what they study. And it's perhaps one of the best kept secrets of memorizing difficult concepts. In case you're wondering what it means, it's basically adding progressively longer and longer intervals of time in between your study sessions. Now, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But it actually makes sense. Let me explain it to you. This study method involves paying close attention to the memory cycle as a whole. It's based on Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve that showed after a steep incline, a steep initial decline in learning time between the first and second memorization session, the curve leveled off progressively with subsequent efforts. It has even been replicated by the good folks at the National Institutes of Health for further proof of its efficiency. The goal is to tailor your learning around scientifically proven points in time between when you start studying and when you begin to forget what you've learned. So let me explain how it works. The basis of this method uses the spacing effect, where adequate timed resting intervals between studying a concept allows your brain to form better neural connections. These resting intervals range from 20 minutes to 31 minutes. No, 20 minutes to 31 days. This calculated spacing will help you remember things more accurately, and you will retain the information longer. Remember from your nervous system class how the brain forms memories by making new neural connections. Spacing allows these new neural connections to solidify and move memories from the hippocampus, or the short-term memory bank, to the neocortex, which is your long-term memory bank. So for instance, if we're trying to master the anatomy of the vertebral bodies, you would first read them over and over without spacing, and it will only take you longer time to master and cause a study fatigue. So in other words, if you just sit down until you know it all and then you stop studying, you're going to experience some study fatigue because you sat there until you finished the entire thing. On the other hand, if you read through the notes and check out the images for a set period of time and then took a break and went back the following day, you'll be able to remember better and spend a shorter amount of time actually studying. So it's kind of like little bursts of studying. Going through the notes again after 4 days and then 7 days and so on, while progressively increasing the interval between the study sessions, like from 4 days to 7 days. My page keeps bouncing around on me. Going through the notes after 4 days and then 7 days and so on, while progressively increasing the intervals between the study sessions, will help you master it in relatively lesser time than if you tried to cram it all in a short period of time. So that is how it works. The advantages of spaced repetition is it allows you to use less actual study time. You'll remember more of what you study. It prevents exhaustion and fatigue that limits your brain performance and allows you to cover more content within a given period. Now, the best way to use spaced repetition, and this is where I give you kind of the how-to part of spaced repetition. So now that you know how useful the method can be in your performance, it's time to put it into practice. It will work for you whether you do your studies offline using flashcards and paperback books or electronically on your computer or on your phone even. The best way so far to use spaced repetition is by using the Leitner system. And that's another one of those force multipliers I'll explain to you. So we'll use the flashcards, little note cards, via the Leitner system and pair it with spaced repetition. So the Leitner system starts by dividing the topics or flashcards into 5 groups. So you get 5 boxes of any size. It can be shoe boxes, macaroni boxes, whatever, and you label them as follows. Box 1 is to be reviewed daily. That's your label, reviewed daily. Box 2 are the cards to be reviewed every other day. Box 3 is reviewed once a week. Box 4 is reviewed bi-weekly. And box 5 is reviewed right before the test. Those are the 5 boxes that you're going to put your note cards in. Now, the box 1 for reviewed daily is where you put all your note cards to begin with. And that's the stuff that you're trying to learn. Box 2, reviewed every other day, will have the topics that you slightly understand. Box 3, review once a week, covers the topics you moderately understand. Box 4, reviewed bi-weekly, is made of the topics you understand well over 75%, but it's not fully memorized. And box 5, that you review right for the test, those are the topics that you know very well. So basically, every card you're studying starts out in box 1. When you get a card right, when you look at the question and you know the answer and you flip it over to confirm that you know the answer, when you get that one right, then it graduates to the next box, from box 1 to box 2. If you get a card wrong, it goes in box 1 and stays there no matter which box you had graduated it to. So in this way, you ensure that you're studying the material that challenges you often, and in addition, you'll use a designated spaced repetition time in between each box as labeled, like daily, every other day, once a week, etc. So, for instance, if patient care material is in box 4, which is reviewed bi-weekly, and you score 100% on the practice questions or the cards in there, then it's moved to group 5. But if you got that far and your performance drops and you can't remember all the answers, it goes all the way back to box 1 and starts over again. So you started in 1, if you know it, it goes to the next one. And once you're done with everything in that box, you wait a week. You wait a week to hit that next box, but the next day you go back to box 1. Every day you're hitting box 1 and trying to clear it to box 2. And then weekly you're going to that's every other day. Box 2 is every other day. And you keep hitting that box every other day till you know that material, and then it graduates once you know it. And you slowly keep progressing it through these series of boxes until you know all the answers. So the other way of using the Leitner system is through applications designed with an algorithm that determines how often you should review a concept. These are alternatives to the Leitner system that I'll share with you. They allow you to create flashcards or download created ones about the concepts you're studying. Then the software app assesses the time you take to remember what the flashcard is all about as a basis for determining how often you see it. The app allows you to even include images on your flashcards and thus aid in memorizing key concepts. Using images is another force multiplier by allowing word-image association and increases retention. So, of course, I always recommend you put a picture of the ankle x-ray if you're studying ankle x-ray techniques. So here's some of the other free applications out there. There's one called Anki or Anki, A-N-K-I. There's Tiny Cards, and all these are linked in my article. Flashcards Deluxe, Memorize, Super Memo, Kanban Flow, one I can't pronounce at all, Mnemosyne maybe? M-N-E-M-O-S-Y-N-E, and then Eidetic, E-I-D-E-T-I-C. Now, the other force multiplier that I like is adding in the Pomodoro Technique. Now, here's how it works. You now know what the subject matter you're going to be studying on which days with the prior techniques we talked about, but what about the distractions that get in your way? The social media notification sounds that are pulling your attention on your cell phone, or the yummy IHOP breakfast sitting in your fridge from last night's post-event binge. In the Pomodoro Technique, Francesco Cirillo coined the term after using the technique in the early 1990s. He was studying as a university student when he came up with this technique. The Pomodoro was a tomato-shaped timer that he used to track his work. And I have a link to it if you actually wanted to go buy one of those original ones. The method capitalizes on short bursts of hyper-focus for 25 minutes, followed by rest and relaxation for 5 minutes. Every 4 rotations or Pomodoros, you take a longer break, like 15 to 30 minutes. This force multiplier helps you power through distractions while allowing frequent breaks to combat study fatigue. So the advantage of the Pomodoro technique is it's great for times when you don't have long periods of time to study. It keeps you on time, on a time schedule, so that you stay focused and get work done. It improves your attention span and concentration, and frequent breaks keep you motivated and bolsters creativity. You know, we all know if you sit down and grind it out for 3 hours, you're going to get tired of what you're studying. You're going to get tired physically and mentally. So by taking a break every 25 minutes or so, getting up, walking around, getting your blood flow going is good for better learning. Just like everything else, there are phone apps for the Pomodoro timing. Just go to your app store and do a search for the word Pomodoro. Now, that's pretty much my force multipliers and how I study. I'm looking for a timer here. So we've been going 16 minutes, so I'll try to wrap this up and keep it under 20 minutes. But there are some other bonus tips I'm going to give you. In fact, I'll give you 8 bonus tips to maximize your study time. Number 1 is choosing your study sanctum. One of the first things I do in studying for one of these exams was to secure a quiet place to study. My favorite place to go would be a college campus or a library, public library, where I could go into a room that has a large table, several chairs, and an eraser board, and I'm able to close the door to this little room so that it's quiet, and I spread my stuff out all over the desk, and I write my ideas up on the board, and that's what I like to choose because it's calm and soothing, minimal distractions. Keep your phone on silent, take snacks and drinks with you in a hidden bag, of course, because you're not supposed to have drinks in there. And that's important to choose your sanctum. Number 2 is have a single target of focus. Being overambitious may be the reason why you don't get much out of your study session. A common mistake is having too much to study in an individual session. Rather, plan to cover one single area of study for a single session and focus on it. You can schedule the other areas in different sessions. Follow the techniques I laid out. Don't try to cram more than is necessary into one day. I remember studying Appleton and Lang for the x-ray boards, and it came with a CD of 1,000 questions, and I broke it up over a 5-day period and just did 200 questions a day. So I went into that library room from 8 to 5, took my food and water, and from 8 to 5, I studied 200 questions until I knew them. I'd start in box 1 and move it all the way across the board in that 8 to 5 time period until I knew it all. Tip number 3, make sure you have the right tools. It's said that studying is like cooking. Without the right tools, you end up with an awful meal, frustration, and a lot of time wasted. You therefore need to have the right tools for each of your study sessions. A study guide, widely covered earlier in my article, is one of those indispensable tools that will make your studying more productive. If flashcards help you study better, then it's time you bought some of them and take them to your study spot. You can also use the apps I mentioned earlier to create or use ready-made flashcards. Make sure you have pens, pencils, markers, papers, notebooks, a laptop, and other tools that could be helpful for food. I just like to bring beef jerky and water. It's simple but effective. Gum also helps to keep the mandible busy when you're not consuming unnecessary calories. Determine what you like that isn't full of sugar and carbs, otherwise you'll suffer from the sugar rush insulin crash and get the brain fog from that, and that won't help at all. That's a reference to Joe versus the volcano. But seriously, don't eat garbage. Garbage in, garbage out is a popular saying. Eat healthy and your brain will function better. And after you pass your boards, all bets are off. Eat whatever you want. Tip number 4, keep the study sessions sacred. When it comes to how the brain works, interruptions take its performance down from the peak to ground zero. As you start studying, the ability to understand continuously rises to a peak level. Any disruption takes it back to zero and makes it harder to reinitiate. You therefore need to put away anything that distracts you. One of the common distractors is your phone. You will have to either put it away or exercise the highest level of discipline in case you are using it to study. Of course, you already know how it goes when you log into social media during a study session. It's a labyrinth that is best avoided if you want to get the best out of your study session. Postpone checking your emails and social media updates until the Pomodoro break. Although you may feel the urge to eat as you study, it's also a distraction that will decrease how much you retain from the study session. You may think that you're good at multitasking until you find yourself reading a concept over and over without understanding it. So you know what it's like when you're in the middle of a project and somebody asks you a question, you have to stop and answer it. Then you kind of have to, okay, where was I? What was I on? Which question was I on? What was my thought process before the interruption? You want to minimize that and keep your study session as sacred as possible. Tip number 5, practice and discipline. By now you've heard the sage-old advice, practice makes perfect. It is as true now as it ever was. Remaining focused during the entire period of your study session is a habit that needs to be practiced over and over. You have to be willing to push yourself to focus intensely even when you don't feel like it. Giving in to distractions only strengthens the negative habit, and so is pushing yourself hard. So with time, it will become easier and actually enjoyable because your brain will register that whenever you hit your study table, it's time for business. So remember, and this is a big one that a lot of people don't get, motivation is fleeting, but discipline gets the job done. Remember your goal and all the work you've done to get this far. Tip number 6, time for recovery. If you're going to study for a long time, for instance, an entire day, divide the available time into sessions with intervening breaks. This is where the Pomodoro Technique comes into play. Utilize breaks that range from 5 minutes to 45 minutes to recover. After intense focus, a break allows your brain and body to recover. During this time, you can watch something on your phone, take a walk, eat, play, or do something that takes your mind off studies. But ensure that it's not too long, as you may have difficulties resuming your studies. Tip number 7, and I'm almost done. I went over 20 minutes, darn it. Tip number 7 is interest. Perhaps the most dependable prerequisite to getting the best out of your ARRT board exam prep studies is interesting. When you are interested in what you're studying, you won't have to struggle with distractions or feeling fatigued. You'll actually enjoy your study session, look forward to the next one. So therefore, you have to do whatever you can to spark that interest in your studies. Think of all the reasons why you became a radiologic technologist, why you have to get certified, and then let that motivate you to study. Set a reward for yourself upon passing the ARRT. Print out a picture of the reward and post it in your study room. When you're interested in what you're studying, your brain is activated better, allowing you to concentrate intensely, understand better, and recall what you study with ease. And the last tip is study alone. Studying in groups is very important. However, to get more out of a given period, studying alone has proven to be more efficient. You are able to focus more and cover a larger part of the area of interest. Think about when you've done group study. It helps because you can lock memories in based on what other people have said and associate visual cues with things you need to remember. But you also have to sit there and wait till they're done with whatever they're doing to get back to what you want to do, and you're losing some study time while they're going through the learning process. So studying alone, there's fewer chance of you getting distracted. When you study with a partner, especially a friend, you may tend to drift off and actually spend less time constructively studying. Reserve group study sessions for revision of what you have covered to reinforce what you already know. If they are better in imaging procedures while you understand physics behind the machines better, you will be able to help each other better through the studies. So I could keep going. There's actually more to the article, and again, you can see that on the radiologictechnologist.com. The remainder topics are choosing the right study guide, like Appleton, Lang versus Mosby's, and I kind of review those, the ARRT content outline, question banks, practice tests, And I kind of go through what each one of those Mosby's and Appleton and Lang offers, and more tips and tricks. So I hope this has been helpful. Make sure you hit the like button if it has, and subscribe to the channel. I'll put a link in the description to the article that goes over all the details of how to study and pass your boards. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for stopping by, and have a good day.